this summit is so important. It is similar to the Paris Agreement was for climate. This is the Paris Agreement for nature, because we are right on the cusp of losing critical habitat, parts of nature that will never be able to be restored, and wildlife that will go extinct forever. So we do need to pull out all stops. And very similar to the climate negotiations, when it comes down to money and the struggles for those developing countries, the poorer countries, those who are more vulnerable, they really need more help. And there is a role for Australia to play here. We are, a wealthy country in comparison to many others. We have a wealth of scientific and research expertise. And of course, we've got a big job to do of our own in terms of protecting our wildlife and nature. But this needs to be part of a global effort. And Australia needs to step up, show some more ambition, and put money on the table to help alongside other countries that have already done that. Germany, Canada, France have all put money on the table to help those poorer countries, and Australia needs to do the same.
I want to stay on the funding issue here, and one thing to come out of this summit so far is this agreement signed by the United States and Australia, and it's an agreement to measure economic value of nature. How do you put a dollar value on ancient forests or, life-giving waterways?
Well, I think it's very difficult, to be perfectly honest. Of course, it's these things are in many ways priceless. We rely on them for our sheer existence. But it is time to value them so that we can ensure that governments actually start to look after them, that there is an incentive to look after them, that corporations and businesses play a role in that as well. It's essential that we change the mindset from destroying nature and the amount of money and profit that comes from destroying it, and what we would gain by protecting and restoring.
Senator, I want to move away from the summit and talk about the fact that the Environment Minister, Tanya Plibersek, just before heading to the summit, had announced an overhaul of Australia's national environment law. This is, of course, after a major review of legislation pertaining to Australia's environment. Now, the Greens Party had pointed out that there is a lack of a climate trigger law, and that would actually limit any sort of progress or any sort of reform. Just explain to us, what is a climate trigger law and how significant it is, and why do you think it's important?
Well, it's essential that we fix our environment laws. They're not fit for purpose. We have laws at the moment that are not protecting nature. They're letting our wildlife, like our koala, go extinct. We have native forest logging that is destroying old growth forest in Australia. And you say that this is moving on away from the conference, but actually this is precisely relevant, because if Australia signs up to an agreement to protect 30% of our land and 30% of our water by 2030 and a zero extinction target, we need to protect, and we need to do that. A climate trigger would ensure that we have a law that can assess new projects and how bad they are for the climate, how much pollution they're producing. At the moment, our Environment Minister can sign off on a new gas or a new coal mine, regardless of the impact that makes on climate change, and says it has environmental approval. The laws are broken and they need to be fixed.
So what do the Greens intend to do in response to the announcement of this overhaul of environmental protection legislation?
Well, a climate trigger is essential to be included if they're going to be laws that are fit for purpose and actually protect the environment. So we need them in there. No project should be being given a green light or a tick of approval if it's making climate change worse, if it's allowing new coal and gas pollution. If it's destroying koala habitat, we need to make sure we are protecting critical habitat. These laws are going to be debated over the coming months. The government has said we won't see even draft legislation until the end of next year. The Greens are going to be pushing hard on this. We're not giving a rubber stamp to any of this. We're going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. And as you know, we're in the balance of power in the Senate, and we'll be using our influence and the votes that we have to get as strong a laws as possible and to make sure we are protecting the climate, we're protecting nature, and we're saving our wildlife.